family. Welcome back to Dark Woke, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. But just before we jump, Dark Woke is a self-funded, self-produced show. We're on Patreon/Dark Woke. I am so grateful for all the support and for you just taking the time to listen. Okay, we have two big AB stories we're covering. Of course, we're going to be talking about Gaza and what some of the shifts in rhetoric are indicators of, and Israel's continued starvation campaign. Just unbelievably heartbreaking. So we'll be covering that. And of course, there's another Jubilee series. I'll save that for later because it is the biggest weenie off you can imagine. But before that, some quick hits. Robert Kennedy Jr., right, is saying that COVID vaccines are no longer recommended for healthy children and pregnant women. That's right. We are always on the verge of the next pandemic. This is not to incite fear. It is just a reality of late stage capitalism, right? We've got climate catastrophes increasing. Heat is increasing. We have created very unsustainable conditions. If you think about, the cattle industry, for example, right, or poultry, which we've gone over in this show, their conditions rife with disease, rife for disease, viruses, diseases, bacteria, whatever. They thrive in wet places and moist places and warm places. And, the way that we sort of cull that is through science and research. That's how we identify and cull the spread of diseases and viruses. And that is what they're dismantling. I want to be really clear about this, right? So RFK comes out and says, these vaccines are no longer recommended for healthy children and pregnant women. These are vulnerable populations, right? But he does this. He makes this announcement in a 58-second video posted on social media, right? So he's saying that he's removing COVID-19 shots from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, right, CDC. He's removing their recommendations for that group. Here's the real, I should say the additional rub. No one from the CDC was in the video, and CDC officials referred questions about the announcement to Kennedy and the U.S. Department of Health and Services and Human Services, which means they didn't know that this recommendation was being made. It was made in their name, essentially, on their behalf, at the very least, and they had no idea that it was happening. And no other details were released, literally none, right? Because remember that Robert Kennedy Jr., so RFK, runs the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, so the HHS. And no other details were released from this by the HSS because, of course, people had so many questions about this. And of course, and this is the thing that really got me to, doctors and public health leaders called the move concerning and also confusing, right? Because you're identifying a very specific subset of the population. And again, this is RFK fueling, the vaccine to autism conspiracy theory that exists across the right, that exists in Christian fundamentalist groups, Christian, extremist groups, and, lefty Lululemon moms. I wouldn't even call them lefty, more like liberals or progressives, right? But the thing that I was like, they called it concerning and confusing, which to me is like science for stupid. Like, you are dumb. But I want to be really clear about this because this is serious. When you have somebody like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., right, who ran on a campaign that said that he was going to transform the healthcare system for Americans, what he actually meant is, I'm going to dismantle it and I'm going to take it away. You will not have healthcare under Robert Kennedy Jr. You're not going to have healthcare under Donald Trump. The entire point of this is to dismantle the system, right? Forbes literally announced that since Trump came into office, this is Donald Trump, since he came into office, that's January, his net worth has increased by $2.9 billion, right? Meanwhile, they can talk about building a golden dome, a massive military budget, but they're going to take away Medicaid, right? They're going to take away SNAP. They're going to take away healthcare infrastructure across the country. And like, you have heard me talk about this man, right? You've heard me talk about this man, Robert F. Kennedy. You've heard me because I enjoy an alpha male type, right? I enjoy a toxic alpha male type, but not in leadership, not in power, right? Like, I'm not taking medical advice from this guy, okay? Are you kidding me? Like, let me ground myself, okay? You want to talk to me about Gold's Gym? You want to talk, like, do I want to see you push weight, right? So that your veins that are as thick, like your blood is as thick as ketchup, right? You've got HGH pumping through your system. Do I want to see that? Yes, I do. I want to see that. But for actual health, I can't explain it to you, but Robert Kennedy Jr. looks like bacteria. I don't know how that's true. I just know that it's true. When I look at him, objectively, I see bacteria. Okay? There's too much stuffed into his skin. Like, I know for a fact he sweats beef tallow. I just know it. This is not the man who should be running healthcare across the country, and he's certainly not the man. The worm in the brain guy, he's becoming even. I don't agree with his politics. I don't agree with his practice, but I mean, I don't even like him anymore. Like none of these people have any. They have zero integrity, and there's no other way to articulate it. Okay, so that's something to be mindful of. Another quick hit. Trump administration is halting the scheduling of new student visa appointments. And why? This is important to note. Why are they doing that? Because they want to add social media checks to the screening system. They don't want foreign students in here, right? Because they don't want foreigners in here, but that's not actually what it's about. So much of this has to do, I was like, why Harvard? Why is Harvard the place? I think we've like sort of touched on it and in later, in earlier episodes, but there is a fixation on Harvard. And of course it's because there's an attack on elitism, but guess who got denied entry into fucking Harvard University? Barron Trump, that gangly bitch. And that's why Donald Trump is attacking Harvard explicitly. I mean, yes, Columbia folded like a fucking lawn chair. A house of cards, they just went down. But Harvard was next, right? Harvard was next. Columbia had already had this like massive story around it, right? Like massive story around it, over the months because of student protests there. And that became, in a way, a type of, ground zero here in the U.S. for student protests that were pro-Palestine. But Harvard wasn't really moving that way, and there's been a hyperfixation on Harvard, and a big part of this has to do with, of course, Harvard's foreign student policies, foreign student bodies, and I want to be really mindful of making something explicitly clear, okay? Because I'm about to play a clip of Leave It from Fox News, right? Nazi Barbie. And she's going to assert some things. And I really want you to hear the language, because Harvard isn't just some elite institution. Like, sure, it like, of course, right? That's a part of it. The legacy admissions have always been the things that, in my opinion, should absolutely change. But these are industries. They are there to make money. But the kind of research that comes out of that, right? Like, we're talking about people figuring out how to dramatically transform the conditions for something like multiple sclerosis, right? How to curb aging and cancer. Like, that's where these things, that's so much of the research, data science, experimentation, and recruitment of the caliber of people, putting them in the right caliber of space to see through these new innovations that dramatically change our lives and the quality of our life. That's also why they exist. And so we need to have a more robust analysis. It's not simply, the right and how demonic they are. Oh, that was, okay. That was, I went to like pull my body up, and the arm of my chair like popped. It adjusts, but I definitely know that sounded like the kinds of shots, like when people fart. But you would know because I ate a lot of pepper and I would squeal because things are rough down there right now. Like I'm reading, I have an undignified life. Like I was reading a bit of Kant today and I literally can't. Like I can't right now. Okay. This, like being alive, it's very Kafkaesque. I'm just like, no, I can't be reading Kant and I can't. You know? Be very mindful when you eat peppers. They're hot going in and they're also hot going out. Anyway, we're talking about something serious. I'm about to play this clip by old girl. So while we're listening to the language that she's using, which is very specific, I want to remind us, because it's like when we hear Harvard University, there's obviously animus for elitist spaces and across the left. But I too am learning why we actually need to be much more informed and nuanced about how we criticize things. We just rely on the fact that that's power and we just critique it. Enough, right? We have got to raise the bar. In the meantime, right, while we raise the bar for ourselves and each other, we also use the bar to beat the shit out of fascists. Just saying. Anyway, here's Nazi Barbie.
And the president is more interested in giving that taxpayer money to trade schools, in programs, in state schools, where they are promoting American values, but most importantly, educating.
This is nonsense, and I forgot to read the chyron here. It's Trump moves to strip Harvard of all federal funding. So that's why, and so she's saying that we're taking these tax dollars and we're going to put them into these trades. First of all, let me be very clear. American males in particular do not want to be in trade schools anymore. The right has spent so much time. I mean, you're literally telling AOC to go back to being a fucking bartender. The right has spent an exorbitant amount of time, effort, and energy, including in the manosphere, of condemning any kind of trade work, of judging people who don't have money, of using that as an insult. You've got people like Andrew Tate, who was one of the, the leading source of that, constantly calling people like, if you don't have Bugatti money, you don't have money. Like, it's absurd. And Nazi Barbie's take here is, it's absolute nonsense. The reason why the numbers have been dropping across America in trade, in trade schools, et cetera, is because Americans don't want to do that work, because you have told them that to do that work, which is valuable work, which is essential work, is failure. It's failure, right? And the infrastructure, the ability to live off of trade work, et cetera, the attacks on trade unions, these things have also made it very challenging, right? Can those salaries compete with the realities of late stage capitalism? It's very difficult. And so this is just another myth that they're selling.
The next generation based on skills that we need in our economy and our society, apprenticeships, electricians, plumbers. We need more of those in our country and less LGBTQ graduate majors from Harvard University.
Do you see what she did there? That Claffy, that little scunt. Did you see what she did right there? That's right. Try to use the LGBTQ, and you already know, all right? Me and some non-binary, no nipple having person from Berkeley, you know what I mean, named Coyote or fucking Sock, we're probably not going to get along. You already fucking know, okay? But this is just you trying to use identitarianism, right? And incite homophobia, transphobia, et cetera, and couple that with elitism or whatever. And you already know that I have my own little theory, okay, about how all of us going into post-secondary, into the post-secondary world didn't necessarily lend to, LGBTQ movements, et cetera. But that's our discussion. That's for us. Now, this is just bullshit. And the fact that people can sit there, I really hope that at the very least, some people who watch Fox News understand that you're being unbelievably manipulated. It's absurd.
And that's what this administration's position is. And we also are not going to tolerate the illegal, criminal, anti-Semitic behavior that we saw take place at Harvard and many other college campuses across the country.
And as we're well aware, we've covered this already. That was never what it was about. That was never, ever, ever what it's about. They don't give a damn. They don't give a goddamn about anti-Semitism. They never have. It's being used. It's being used. It's being used to justify all types of horrific atrocities in Palestine and in Gaza. It's being used to silence and censor people here in the United States. It's being used to justify rampant anti-immigration, draconian anti-immigration policy. That's how anti-Semitism is being used. Meanwhile, anti-Semitism is quite, it's not organized yet, but it's certainly being openly talked about on the right, which is why, and when this piece comes out, putting out this week, I make the case for why we need to use the term Jewish extremism. And like we discussed, y'all, we were in the know. We've been knowing. I blew some people's minds. They're going to be really upset about this, but that's where we're at. Because if we don't provide, I make two arguments for it, and I think you've heard one, of course, which is how it's being used to derail. But the other side of it, which I may or may not have also mentioned, is in the absence of language, right? So when the right says, because I'm listening, that's the thing. That's my job. My job is to combat anti-Semitism. My job is to pay attention to the evolutions of rhetoric and discourse as it pertains to systems of oppression. That's my job. And so I'm listening and I'm watching and I'm reading. I see what Candace Owen says. I see what Dan Bilzerian says. I even see what like Dave Smith says, for example. And it's a constant thing that I'm paying attention to. I listen to, not every single episode because it would be exhausting, but clips frequently of guys like Nick Fuentes, who is a very open, very vocal racist, white nationalist, anti-Semite. That doesn't necessarily he doesn't call for violence. He just wants everybody out. He wants everybody out. And he's listened to. He's listened to quite a bit. So my job, right? My job in paying attention to these things, in reading things, in listening to things, and watching things, is to recognize the shift of talk to organized talk. It's very different. It's massively different. And how that happens is because we are not generating language to describe what we're all seeing. We are all seeing the Zionist lobby, right? The ADL, right? AIPAC, the Jewish policy, whatever, right? But they're not simply working. We've all seen their unbelievable influence on Congress. It's something that every Congress member that's honest will talk to you about. If you don't align yourself with AIPAC, you're out. You're out. They will work against you in every way. They'll dangle funding over your head. They'll fund your, what's it called? They'll fund the person running against you. They'll fund your opponent. That's what there's language for that for a reason. There's a reason why, and it's loathsome. Don't get me wrong, but why nobody in the industry is talking about it, or why it's still considered dangerous to even mention anything pro-Palestine. And that's because of the influence of the Zionist lobby. But the interests are not simply to push through Zionism. It's to push through a certain kind of supremacy that exists. And we need a language for that, because in the absence of language, do you know what they're saying? The Jews, right? This is proof of the Jews and what they do. This is proof of the Jews' power. Yes, the Jews may have been expelled from different places, and this is what they're saying on these right-wing, podcasts, on these right-wing shows. It's what's being written about. Maybe, yes, Jews got expelled from different countries, but because they were doing this, because this is what Jews do. And using stereotype, using anti-Semitism or whatever, and in our refusal to engage, to generate discourse, we leave the field open for that. And if you want proof of that, think about the trans thing and how transness and how we lost that narrative. We simply refuse to engage, and the trans narrative and the way that organized transphobia happened made it so we are now running from, several laps back, because we simply refuse to engage. And there has to be a language for what we see and what we're experiencing, but because it also right-sizes the issue, we need to properly disengage anti-Semitism and own that, because while this administration is calling anything that even remotely criticizes Israel or is even remotely, in defense of, just bombing people to smithereens, erasing entire generations of people. Entire lineage just disappeared in a matter of days, hours, right? Unbelievable to say. They call that anti-Semitism. Meanwhile, there are literal white supremacists and white nationalists in the administration that is currently at the height. And the ADL and entities like AIPAC have no problems working with them. That is how extremism works. That's what that is. But anyway, we'll have more on the student visas aspect, but it lines up with all the other anti-immigration policies. But again, we have to look at these overlapping systems and why they're happening. I am so unbelievably disgusted and heartbroken. I mean, the video, the image of a little girl, the sole survivor of, when the building that they were in, she's Gazan, and the building that they were in, they blew it up. And there's this image, and by they I mean Israelis, right? They're just, it's about bombing civilians. It's never been about Hamas. It's never been about Hamas. Extremism begets extremism. And, there she is, the silhouette of this little girl, and just flames everywhere. And she survived, and thank God for that. But there is no justification. There'll never be a justification for it. And they're not even bothering to hide it. Right? The IDF has literally said 75%. This is on May 25th, 75% of Gaza to be occupied in 2 months. Right? 2 million civilians to be concentrated in 3 zones. Yeah. It's clear. And you want to know how I know? Do you want to really know how things are reaching a critical point, which is why we cannot turn away, why we must create language so that when we talk about it, we're not getting derailed. When we use the language of Zionism, it too often invites conversations on Jewish, uniqueness, the need for Jewish safety, the need for, the religious, religious entitlements, et cetera. We don't have time for that. We literally do not have fucking time for that. That's already built in, babe. Do you know, it's used manipulatively, because it always amazes me because the people who most often default to that have no idea about the actual anti-Semitism that exists here in America, right? And those 2 Israeli ambassadors, that's not an example of anti-Semitism. That is extremism begetting extremism, right? That's what that is. That's what happens, right? Oh, and there's one other thing I wanted to add. Sorry. Because I mentioned George Floyd yesterday. I've been reflecting so much on it. And I think we have to think about, partly, as we default to the Democrats, but this is something for us too. This is a big takeaway, right? I've been sitting with this. I think it's greatly important for a lot of people. 2020 was an opening point for them. For a lot of people, right? 2020 was a galvanizing moment. This is the first time they came into activism, and what a time, right? What a moment to come into it. Millions of people were suddenly very much aware of police brutality, and sure, be great if it happened earlier, but that's not the point. I was grateful, and I was but so go with that. Think about that, right? Now think about the other massive thing that's happened since then, which is the student protests and protests here in the United States, also tens of millions of people, right, who protested against Israel's genocide campaign against Palestine. In both of those cases, right? And remember that that arguably is another jump off point. I'm sure there was a lot of overlap. And so what people have experienced is two massive campaigns that were tactical, intelligent, articulate. Very, like, I would argue the BLM was significantly more organized than the others, but that's okay. That's what happens when there isn't necessarily clarity on, the blueprint for how to fight foreign policy is not as readily accessible and available, as a blueprint for national campaigns, right? So it made sense it was less organized, and also non-organizers were leading it. But in both of those experiences, we saw there were clear demands, clear asks, and the Democrats didn't do a fucking thing on either. They didn't win a single goddamn thing. And that's going to do something to you. That's going to do something. I've been really sitting with that part, that the Democrats' inability to show up in that time to defend the very obvious, clear things that we were saying that needed to happen, like, they did nothing. They didn't win a single fucking thing. Not anything meaningful, right? In the places where the local shifts happened, that was because local people made the difference. We needed national and international intervention, and they just weren't there. Now, we can look at and study the tape, right? We got to study the tape. What were the points of intervention? What could have changed if we had X amount of people in X spots, right? So, if we had this number of people on, this board and this number of people on that board, for example, or committee, sorry, is the term there. If we had the certain number of, people in the House, certain people, there's so many places where there might have been points of intervention that we don't necessarily know. So it's not about throwing it away, because again, if we're just being honest, we don't have another option. There is not going to be a third party system, probably while I'm alive, here in the United States. I'm hoping I'm wrong, because it could change. That could actually change, but it could only change if super PACs are eliminated. So there's a hardline cap on political spending. If we get rid of the Electoral College, and if we get rid of the filibuster under a democratic government, I want to be really clear about that. But those things would have to change. And the reality of that changing in the foreseeable future, not real. And so we have to be strategic and get out of this place where we're just critiquing power. I want to be able to do all the marching and do all the rah, 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 and do all the yelling and see our demands through. That is results. It's not about what we believe. It's about the results of our beliefs. And it's okay. It's okay if we don't win every time, but we've got to try, and we've got to try something new, because I'm going to tell you something, right? And just to get back to where we left off, there is a reason right now, that Canada, the UK, and France are all taking a stance and a position against Israel. That's the fucking West, babe. That's the West outside of here, minus Australia. That's the West, really, right? In terms of the big players, they are no longer like it's Elakad, right? It's one day everyone will have been against this. It's that they're abandoning ship. Those fucking monsters, in this regard, those fucking monsters, right? They're abandoning ship. They're like, oh shit, we know where this is going. We don't want to be a part of this. But you were a part of every step of the conditions that brought us here. You don't get to fucking back out now. Do something about it. Do something fucking meaningful. I mean, the UK is they said they're going to put some sanctions on Israel. That's not enough. It's not enough. A single cent shouldn't go to Israel from America, but they're emboldened because America's still paying the bills. America's still footing the bill while everyday life for Americans grow worse and worse. That's it, right? You want to put this massive spending package. You want to cut people's Medicaid, but L3 Harris, which is this, weapons company, privately owned, is going to build the Golden Dome. They're guaranteed by what, $25 billion? Yeah. L3 Harris, right? That's what we're putting money towards, while people literally can go into debt for the rest of their life for getting sick in America. Where we have a pregnant woman who is fucking brain dead while a fetus grows inside of her, right? A baby. And that could have been a decision of the family, but they didn't get to make that decision. The government made that decision. The government made that decision. Macabre doesn't even come close to covering it. We're going to go into more on Israel's treatment of Palestinians, what's changed, why it matters, etc. But right before then, I did say to you that I had a video, hold on, that I wanted to pull up. I said I'm going to find something on this guy. I made a reference yesterday, and I'm trying to be more consistent with taking notes, but it's Niemöller, and I had mentioned, right, the fact that something I hadn't made a connection to before, and it was because of a quote. It was because of a quote by this guy, Martin Niemöller, who, I'll go into. Well, I'll let a clip go into. Because I'm like, I was like that I didn't come up with this. Where did it come from? Where the socialists, they came for the socialists, and then they came for the labor unions. But what I was able to glean from that, right? It's how you take a statement and apply it in praxis, right? And so it's I made this connection that I'm like, of course, the only way that you can see through fascism is to destroy or denigrate those who would fight most virulently against fascism. That's us. That's us. That's why there is such a vested interest in keeping a boot heel on the necks of women and on the necks of Black people. Trans people, sure. But it's more cultural. We're seeing real systemic attacks. I will not diminish the impacts of homophobia, transphobia, and systemic transphobia. But ultimately, right, this is a relatively new thing. We had trans rights because we had women's rights, point blank fucking period. And so I'm not interested in quibbling if I believe that securing trans rights would have spillover impact, then I'd be reframing things. But it doesn't. It doesn't. It does not make sense to fight explicitly for trans rights. I mean, try to get a white trans woman to talk about anything else. My God. Just like one time, bitch. One time. Okay? Post about something else. Read a book about Muslims. Just give me something else, please. Obviously culturally we push back against it, but that's not where we it is my opinion that is not where we should be organizing or putting too much energy into, but because it's part of a culture war that we have bit into because people want to feel unique. And why am I saying this right now? Because of course I would only do this in trusted spaces, is because Pink News just put out this fucking thing that's like, I swear to you, it's up. It's a post, it's up there. It says, what is trans broken arm syndrome and how can we help stop it? At the time I had like 11,000 likes, and I swear to God, okay, I was like, put me back in the fucking closet. Put the A cups back in. I'm out. I don't want anything to do with this. Because what is trans broken arm syndrome? It's like, this was on May 21st it came out, and it's basically like medical discrimination, right? Like one person, this one random trans guy was like, my arm was broken for all these years, and because I'm trans, nobody knew or cared about it, right? Medical discrimination where transgender patients' unrelated health issues are attributed to their gender identity, often delaying proper care. Studies like PubMed from 2020 confirm nearly a third of transgender individuals face this issue. I'm not trying to say that this doesn't happen. I'm trying to say that it's called medical discrimination. I don't know if you know, but women also experience it. Black people also experience it. Fat people experience. That's where I learned about the terms like this. But they call it trans broken arm syndrome is absolute fucking bullshit. It's medical discrimination. The more that we pigeonhole, the more that we seek out uniqueness, the harder it is to actually secure wins and fights. Because if we had fought for fucking robust healthcare for everybody in America, trans rights, trans healthcare would have been secured. But we didn't do that. We actually played into the culture war. If we cared about building power, we wouldn't fall for these fucking tricks. Why does this annoy me so much? Because in the aughts, in the literal aughts, right? Like, not the aughts. But I think I was like maybe 22, 21. So like, in the 2010s, I can't do math. But anyway, I sat in on a fat phobia workshop because I didn't know anything about fat phobia. I was just coming into like all these things, learning all these things. And, you know, I've thought it was probably best to start with not what I personally experience, but what I don't experience. And I don't experience fat phobia. And, you know, it was such a visceral way. So you know, there's two facilitators, and they broke down how, like, you know, it doesn't matter what they go to the doctor for. Hey, you know, I'm experiencing back pain. Well, it's because you're fat. Okay. Hey, I'm experiencing shortness of breath. It's because you're fat. Okay. Hey, you know, I have this pain in my leg. It's because you're fat. And the obsession with thinness equating health, and I think the dismissal, the absolute casual dismissal, and it was very much exaggerated in the experience of women. And not exaggerated, I don't mean like they're exaggerating it. I mean the experience of it is quite high. And I think that all fat people experience it. But then because you also have the added layer of misogyny. Women, when they go to doctors and say, hey, I'm experiencing this, doctors say, I don't know. It is a literal fact, if you look it up right now, that if you're experiencing something and maybe you failed a couple of times, I want to reframe that. If you've been to the doctor and because you are experiencing a series of symptoms and you don't know why, and every other effort has failed you, right? Every other pursuit, because these doctors will dismiss or they don't care or whatever because they don't believe you. They still think women are hysterical. That's a medical term, right? Women are just making shit up. You know, shit. Where was I going with this? Oh, you know, there's this. They'll go in and they'll say these things, and there's a medical fact that especially if you are having trouble with a diagnosis, if you go in with a man, literally any man, and get him to say that this is what you're experiencing, you will get significantly better treatment, and the likelihood of you identifying whatever ails you, of properly identifying it so you can create a care plan that works for you specifically, increases exponentially. So this trans broken arm syndrome, I'm like, put me back in the fucking closet. I'm done with this bullshit. I'm so fucking done. I will fight tooth and nail for trans people being safe. Tooth and nail. Right? Even though I have been transitioning for years and I'm somehow getting fucking prettier every day. I'm furious about it all the time. That's not nobody's fault. So even though I'm only in it partially, even though I want to be in it so bad, there's a Jamal inside of me. There's a Jamal in here. But this, I can't deal with this. I cannot deal with this. I can't. We already have a term for it. It's called medical discrimination. If we fight medical discrimination, then we actually might see some gains when it comes to medical discrimination. If we try to fight trans broken arm syndrome, good fucking luck. The terminal uniqueness, it's stressing me out. I think it's stressing me out today, especially in light of, you know, I'm reading about a woman who was literally brain dead and gestating a baby, right? No consent. from her family, no consent from her. She is dead. She is dead. She's gone. And I don't know enough about what happens from brain to brain inside, but I know it's probably significant. Right? I don't know. But to know that these things are happening, and to read this, and because it's not to see the fold and the overlap. And I think that's something that we try to do really well and really intentionally on this show, is to create these overlaps and these points of connections so that we realize we're not alone, how to fight, how to strategize, where to organize, and we don't lose ourselves in these very, very self-obsessed narratives about how I uniquely experience oppression. It doesn't fucking... Do you know how many boxes I check? I'm not disabled. I could be tomorrow. I could literally just go outside and walk into something. Right? It could happen without me trying. So if that's a box, if I need to check if that's my final destination box so that I can just, like, I will do it. I'm so sick of this. Thank you for indulging this rant. It's really a lot easier for me to get angry about this than the gargantuan feelings of the monstrosity of Israel's genocide against Palestinians. It's just, it's a lot easier to get angry about that because the soullessness, but also I want to be clear that I do feel passionate about what I just said, because like that's what we should be seeing more of. We lost trans rights when we lost abortion rights, because it was never about abortion. It was always about body autonomy. And when we allowed for the disempowerment of women, we actually allowed for the disempowerment of ourselves. But the absolute soullessness of the active genocidal campaign. I mean, this image of people being forced into corrals reminded me of 1945 Poland, in these starvation camps, in these concentration camps. And that's what they are. That's what they are. So with that, this is I don't typically play. Oh, right. I was supposed to play the Niemöller thing. So let me just do that. You can get a little history, but it came from this quote. Yeah. Okay. We're doing okay for time. No, you know what? I think it's interesting. And, she talks about the man and then she'll give you the quote at the end. But remember that our takeaway here in Dark Woke is how powerful we actually are, right? If you take away the fighters of fascism, then fascism can grow. If you take them out, if you disempower them, and it's about time that we properly realize that. It stops us from building power completely. And when we engage in that, we enable it. So this is a video that I found, Dara Star Tucker on TikTok. Here we go.
Martin Niemöller welcomed Adolf Hitler's rise to power.
Hold on. Niemöller. Okay, that's definitely not what I said before. I don't know what them two little dots mean. I will tell you this, though. I came across a clip of stand-up in German, which I've never heard before. It scared me. It scared me so bad. And then also nobody was laughing, but I couldn't tell if it was because it wasn't funny or because they emote differently. It's like it made me so scared.
He was a German nationalist, a former U-boat.
I heard it and I was like, ah! Okay, sorry.
Commander and a devout conservative clergyman. Like a lot of other people at the time, he believed that a strong leader could restore Germany's honor and...
So sorry, because I was talking over it, right? So this is Niemöller being like, he's a devout clergyman, he believes all these things, but he also significantly believed in law and order. So when certain things started to happen, he was already right-wing.
Order after the chaos of the Weimar years. Niemöller was born in 1892 into a deeply religious household. He fought in World War I and came away from that experience with a firm belief in duty and national pride. When he became a Lutheran pastor, his faith was intertwined with his patriotism. Like many...
This is a moment to also name something. The other thing that I name in my piece is there is a reason why the vast majority of the Jewish diaspora is against Israel's genocide of Palestinians, is against, they are anti-Zionist. And it's because nationalism makes nationalism fuels and breeds extremism. And we have really not had the opportunity to see that manifest in real time, like generationally. And certainly we weren't there for the beginning, but we're here for this incredibly pivotal, horrific, hideous stain on human existence that just happens to be the one in our generation. Because this exists. It's why being a human is hard, because we know what we are. We know what we're capable of. And that's all the magical wonders, and that's all the most monstrous things. But monstrous things tend to happen because monstrous people seek power.
Many in the church, he saw left-wing communism as a greater threat than right-wing fascism. And when Hitler came to power, Niemöller
he saw left-wing communism as more threatening, right, than I want to pull this back. Because this is so important. Hold on. I pulled it back a little bit too much, but let's just go with it.
When he became a Lutheran pastor, his faith was intertwined with his patriotism. Like many in the church, he saw left-wing communism as a greater threat than right-wing fascism.
He saw left-wing communism as a greater threat than right-wing fascism. Right? That's where we're seeing the little hails, right? Lock in. So when we get to the end, remember that line.
And when Hitler came to power, Niemöller at first saw him as a defender of Germany against godlessness and disorder. He was not alone in this belief. Many of his fellow clergy stood by, convinced that politics was not their battlefield, that faith and state could coexist in separate spheres. The Catholic Church even came to an agreement with the Nazis called the Reichskonkordat that offered them a certain amount of protection.
Sorry, that was a terrifying word. Hold on. The Reich what? Reichskonkordat. Oh. Yeah, and it's as ugly as it sounds. I'm not I don't want to hate on because the whole thing, because I actually really fuck with the directness of Germans, but we do gotta add it's like a very strong sounding language. There's so much overlap with not just what is happening in Israel, right? But what is happening here. The coalition that took place, right, that she just named between the Catholic Church and fascists. They claim the moral ground. Well, hilariously, ironically, whatever, we do as well. But the difference is that they actually build power. And sure, the system's rigged and skewed towards them. But I wonder what it was like at this time, right? I wonder if the left was plagued by the same. They were. The left was plagued by the same shit that we have right now, 100%. But a good place to start in terms of labor movements, if you want it through a Black liberation lens, in Europe and the UK, of course, is CLR James, Pan-African Revolution. Anyway, sorry.
That offered them a certain amount of protection if they would stay out of governmental affairs. And it worked for a time. Then came the purging of Jewish members from the churches, the restrictions on religious speech, the rising tide of fear.
Oh, this is on my A History of Pan-African Revolt. Sorry, that's the name of the book.
Niemöller watched as the state seized control of every institution. He watched the Nazis begin to disregard the Reichskonkordat agreement and begin persecuting the Catholic Church.
Okay, right there, okay? So they made the Catholic Church and the Nazis, the fascists, got in bed together, right? Fascists fucked the Catholic Church and then tossed them to the curb. Same kinds of disregard for state and state practices, state this, state that. Like every type of check or balance that existed was exploited or disregarded by fascists, because that's what fascists do.
He watched them begin closing Catholic schools, newspapers, and other religious institutions. He stood by as they began targeting lay leaders, clergy, and nuns, and sending many of them to concentration camps. The Nazis launched anti-Catholic propaganda campaigns and staged morality trials. He watched as colleagues disappeared, as whispered voices of dissent were silenced by the heavy boots of the Gestapo. It soon became clear that fascism, and more specifically the German form of fascism called Nazism, would never be able to live in harmony with any other religion because fascism itself requires a deeply religious devotion to the state.
A deeply religious devotion to the state.
Under fascism, extreme patriotism, rabid nationalism must become your religion. Ye shall have no other gods before it. By the time Niemöller figured this out, it was almost too late. In 1937, he was arrested and sent to a concentration camp in Sachsenhausen.
He supported the rise of right-wing fascism, and then was put in a concentration camp because of the rise of right-wing fascism. When we're reading about foreign students getting disappeared, people on student visas, people's visas being revoked, sent to concentration camps or whatever, right? There is this idea for a lot of people, couldn't happen to me. Couldn't happen to me, or it's not going to happen to me, or I'm not like, now, if it's happening to others, it's coming. It comes for us all eventually.
And then later to the Dachau camp, where he remained for 7 years. It was in the cold darkness of the camps, surrounded by the ghosts of those who had vanished before him, that his soul transformed. He realized that his silence had never saved anyone. His realization was damning not only of the regime, but of himself. When he emerged, he didn't attempt to justify his past. He didn't excuse his blindness. Instead, he spoke the words that would echo through history, a confession and a warning. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Lest we forget, history does not forgive silence, and conscience, when awakened, does not rest.
I just found this to be incredibly compelling, moving, and essential in terms of framing. And, you know, it's odd because I'd come across that quote a while ago, right? But I read it as one reads, you know, anything moderately compelling, right? It just sounded so obvious, right? There wasn't but the profundity of those words today are staggering. I see it not simply, and I think I'm reading everything this way now, like there's been a shift. I'm seeing it not as a quote, right? Not as a reflection. I'm seeing it as instruction. This is instruction. That's what all of this is. That's why that's why we share these stories. That's why we tell these stories. And that's also why we have to generate discourse and language. We cannot simply, pout our way out of this. I can't stress that enough. We have got to generate discourse, especially because the level of sophistication, every time any kind of fascism grows, right? Any kind of apartheid state, it becomes more intelligent. It learns, right? It learns from its losses, its failures, right? Oh, well, this is how, if we saw that South African apartheid really ended because of international sanctions, right? Okay, cool. So it was like, yeah, we won't ever rely on all of these countries. No, we'll get our bills paid by these guys. And these guys need us anyway because they need a foothold over here. They don't have any grounds. Like they basically in a I don't know, 10 years, 5 years, I don't know, right? I'll listen to the experts at places like Harvard that said, that America is, sort of peaked in terms of being the biggest superpower in the world, because China's coming, and America does not invest in its citizens in the slightest, right? So these are fascism evolves, and we've witnessed it evolve in real time. Are we? Are we taking the lessons? Are we applying our own teachings, or are we evolving? Is my question. And I don't know if we are. And I'm not, I don't feel daunted by that. And it's not a judgment to me. It feels objective, because if we're not evolving, then we simply must evolve. And one of the first ways to do that is to generate discourse. So, because once you have a language to start describing what is happening, then once you can identify a thing, you can then begin to address a thing. You can begin to understand a thing. You can begin to power map a thing. And I want to be clear, like I'm being, it's one of those things again where I'm being a bit rhetorical, because of course we've evolved. I really enjoy reading, graduate papers. They publish them, and if ever you have like a very weird specific issue area you want to learn from, there's so much information out there. And then where what's really great is, even if you're not that into the paper, the bibliographies are fantastic places. So there's it's there, but we've become very so verbose and less effective. But that's partly because fascism has evolved. And maybe I suppose what I want to say is, because like I said, we do evolve. I don't think we're evolving at the pace that fascism is. And so we just have to speed it the fuck up. Because, and I think we can say this, right? It's too late. And that doesn't mean we stop fighting. But we didn't do what needed to be done when it comes to Israel, stopping Israel from its genocidal agenda. And yes, we're set up to fail. Yes, it was rigged entirely. And yes, we didn't know what to do. People marched, people cried, people got thrown out of the country, people risked their lives. So much was given. But if we just from an objective place, it's not to say that the fighting didn't happen, but it didn't happen enough. And a big part of that was because of the framing around October 7th. That made it take so long. But now people are waking up. And because you can't blame this on Hamas. You can't. Here is Glenn Greenwald, who mostly, irritates me these days, who really breaks down. Even Piers Morgan has come around. Glenn Greenwald, I've already yapped about him. He was great once and pretty fucking awesome at The Intercept, and then kind of went weird. But, broken clocks and Azealia Banks.
The Israelis are like an apocalyptic cult. They don't recognize moral limits. They don't acknowledge the humanity of Palestinians. They absolutely consider Palestinians to be animals. There's no way you can just do what they've done to Gaza, bomb every remaining hospital.
I'm going to pull that back from the beginning. There's something that he said right there, though. He said it's like Israelis, Israel and Israelis don't acknowledge moral limits. They're recognizing they don't acknowledge the humanity of Palestinians. When I said fuck Israel, free Gaza, I knew that the fuck Israel was going to be the contentious thing. Because everybody, the people who are yippy about this, the liberal Zionists, they're too scared to say anything about free Gaza, even though it might make them feel uncomfortable. But fuck Israel was too much. Oh, and you got a lot of DMs. Would you say fuck America? I was like, first of all, I love America, as you all know. But like, as if that's not something that people say constantly all the time. You could literally, there's just shirts out there that you could just get on street corners that have those two words together. No, and not all Israelis. Listen, shut the fuck up. Truly, shut the fuck up. I and nobody else in the world needs that caveat. Okay, do we have a fucking horrific evil administration here in America? Yeah. Is every American responsible for it? No. Are there Americans who are fighting against it? Yeah. Yeah. I literally couldn't have spoken more effusively about Israelis, particularly in the wake of October 7th, who I've literally met, who are championing Palestinian safety to the best of their ability, who were themselves being targeted by Netanyahu, right? The families of hostages, right, whose politics shifted or they already had the politics, were very vocal, very anti-Netanyahu, right? And really anti-genocide, but in those moments, I can say more accurately that they were anti-Netanyahu. And there's this like demand, right? There's this demand that you have to be specific about Netanyahu. No, I don't. Not in the face of fucking genocide. No, the fuck I don't. Can you imagine Nazi Germany, the Holocaust happened? Not all Germans, not all Nazis were bad. Some of them had things done to them. Okay, apartheid, apartheid Africa. I'm sorry, apartheid South Africa, right? Not all the Boers, not all the murderers, not all the fascists. Can we be fucking serious for 5 minutes? I'm sorry, like at least here, I can bring some of the raw emotions, because when I speak publicly, I bring in every ounce of, I take so seriously the responsibility I have, but it is so corrosive at times, because it requires me to mute some of the very real and affirming human emotions and giving permission for people to do the same. So I'm putting my energies into, obviously generating, discourse and everything else. But that's one of the things I'm going to miss, as this, as we turn towards kind of growing the show out, is the intimacy of this little world we've built. But anyway, let me bring Glenn Greenwald back, because this is one of those things. There's a part of me that is, in a way, even though I'm sorry if it's a bit disjointed, but that's preparing us for the attacks that's going to come when this piece comes out on Jewish extremism, and to understand the points that people use. So that's part of it, and the other part of it is that it matters. We are literally not allowed to talk about Palestine in America. We're literally not allowed, because it's called anti-Semitism. We're literally not allowed to criticize Israel in America, because it's called anti-Semitism, which is also being conflated with anti-Americanism, right? We have Christians who are saying, that's why they support the president, who don't care that tens of millions of people, are impacted by foreign policy all over the world, that we have children who need HIV medications to survive, and we're cutting aid to them in the world. Thousands, tens of thousands of kids murdered by the state of Israel, right? But what is happening, though, is there is a growing movement across the right that is very much against this. Not the weenies like Charlie Kirk, et cetera, that will toe the line for the Trump administration as much as he possibly can. But even for people like Candace Owens, she's been extremely vocal. Another issue, of course, is that there's an overlap with anti-Semitism in those spaces. Creating language and generating language makes that distinction so that we can talk about it and do those essential reframes. Because again, we need to trade in Jewish extremism for the Jews. That's anti-Semitism, right? That way. Unless you say things like, I fuck with the Jews, which I do. It's like, Otherwise, you got to be really careful how you say that shit. But I want us to just be really mindful because they have literally made it illegal. And it does come with great risk, but we also have that, like, it's our inability to name what is happening is enabling it happening, which is the starvation campaign.
The Israelis are like an apocalyptic cult. They don't recognize moral limits. They don't acknowledge the humanity of Palestinians. They absolutely consider Palestinians to be animals. There's no way you can just do what they've done to Gaza. Bomb every remaining hospital and mosque and school. They're bombing electricity generators for hospitals so that ICU patients on incubators die. They've bombed shelters. They've constantly bombed people in tents. The number of children who are dead, including under 3 years old, is just, as a statistic, is shocking in itself. There's no question the number of people who have died that we hear from Gaza is extremely underestimated because they only count the people who go through the morgue. Huge numbers of people are still lying under that rubble. There's massive rubble everywhere with bodies underneath who don't make it to the morgue. There are other people who die of disease or hunger who aren't counted because they're not actually killed with bombs or bullets, but they're victims of the Israeli action nonetheless. They've stripped the Palestinians in Gaza of all remaining humanity. I mean, they go to bed every night with Israeli bombers over their head, being terrorized every night that that's the last night their children are going to wake up. I don't even know how you get through this and then maintain any semblance of life, especially the million children in Gaza whose childhood is shaped by this. How do you function? How do you become a normal human being? How do you ever feel safe or stable? Or it's inconceivable.
It is. And, I found this clip. I mean, I think we can intuit, right? Like that the number that we're given, is inaccurate, and we default to that number because it is a provable number. But the reality is the, places like, the Lance or whatever, like established papers say that it's closer to 180,000 instead of just 53, or some even estimates between 180,000 and 300,000. Here is a clip of a person who is directly impacted who explains this. So it was a response. So it was one of those stitches. So it says POV, the number of Palestinian deaths went from 53,000 to 180,000 plus in 1 minute. So, she's like, how is that possible? And here's the explainer. Sorry, the bad music is partly while she's sitting there eating a fruit, being like, how is that possible? But she's doing this, of course.
At the moment.
So now we're here in this interview sort of context. So there's somebody talking and it says, here are 2 reasons why, as in, why did the number jump? It's a bit loud, so I'll turn it down.
They're saying that there's 53,000 deaths. Do you think there's actually more?
Trust me, it's astronomically more than that. Actually, the Lancet report, and the Lancet Journal is one of the most respected medical journals. It estimates
that is true. It's the Lancet Journal, which is, for the record, like something RFK, just to tie it to the front of this episode, is he's discontinuing a relationship with the Lancet, with Harvard Medical Journal, with all of these places. These stupid bitches are trying to kill us, and I will not let it happen. I will not go down from a man that sweats fucking beef tallow, who will tell me that I can stay healthy by fucking injecting shark semen into my fucking veins. But it's more like inject. No, I'm not going to do that, but I think you know what I mean.
Anything between 180 to 330,000
Yeah.
deaths.
Yeah.
You've got to remember, it's been stuck on the 50, 60,000 mark for 9 months.
Yes.
But we see dead people every day. And that's because, the counting system in Gaza has essentially been destroyed as well, and also.
So that's the big one. That's number one. The counting system in Gaza has been destroyed completely, right? Yeah, because every institution has been attacked, every building that they can bomb, every group. This is not a secret anymore. And for the record, just to tie back to that whole not all Israelis thing, it's true. It's true. It's not all. But a lot of Israelis support this. A lot of Israelis don't support how it's done. They don't support the extreme action, but they're eager to expand Israel and to remove anything that doesn't feel like Israel.
Also, as well, like the people that get counted are the bodies that make it into hospital. There are thousands under the rubble who are dead. There are also people that, when their loved ones get killed and they died, they don't feel the need to take them to hospital. They know they're dead, so they
Yeah.
just bury them
Yeah.
because it's too dangerous to. It's too dangerous and it's too difficult and it costs money. If you were to transport, a dead body, you'd have to get a donkey cart or a ride, and that costs money. So you're not going to pay, you know, the little money that you have to transport a body to the hospital for them to say, yeah, it's dead, and then you to then take that body and then bury them. So people just bury the bodies. And they bury the bodies on the side of the road. They find a patch of dirt and they just dig it up and they bury the bodies there. There's so many bodies that are buried on the side of the road.
Yeah, that is more the reality. So, we were saying 50, 60,000, but this is, and it might seem like just a talking point, but it's an essential one, right? We can quote the Lancet Journal that says it's close to 180 to 330,000 people, right? 300,000 people have been literally murdered in Gaza. And, they say it's about Hamas, right? If Hamas is still out here as robust and as, active as they are, then this is the word, you failed. You failed and fuck off. You failed. You failed at this campaign. That alone, right? If we were being honest, that alone would stop the America from continuing to pay Israel's bills, right? While talking about a fucking deficit here. I'm just gonna play these clips of like the Jubilee thing isn't even that good. It's like Jordan Peterson is such a fucking weenie, but he's such a loser. But he's a huge figure on the right. He's a huge figure on the right, and also the direct result of poor strategy on the part of organizers who were trans, right, or pro-trans, and I'm not upset about because I understand, but they went after him. They went after his tenure. He was literally a fucking nobody because he refused to say pronouns. I don't know why I know is contentious. I know it's contentious for a lot of people, but nobody owes you that. I genuinely don't like you. We should not be in a place where people are forced to say or address us how we want to be addressed. We should. There should be respecting. People shouldn't be harassing you or bullying you about that. But that shouldn't cause you to lose your job. Not getting my pronouns right should not cause you to lose your job. We have precedents for bullying. We have precedents for harassment. And it created this huge backlash that honestly gave trans people not a single fucking thing. The only thing that we should care about is, does this move the needle of power for trans rights? No, the fuck it doesn't. It's not a bad thing to do, but it's the same logic that got us to be like pregnant people instead of women. Women are give birth on a mat. This is not even a conversation I'm willing to entertain, because if we have reproductive justice and women are being treated well through the process of pregnancy, which they're not. We actually have the same statistics as a quote unquote first world country as they do in a quote unquote third world country when it comes to maternal morbidity and mortality. And Black women have a 300% higher chance of dying regardless of wealth. You want proof of racism? Right fucking there. Black women have a 300% chance of dying over their white counterparts in childbirth and in the care immediately afterwards. They are 300% more likely to die regardless of their wealth bracket. Serena Williams talks about that too. There's whole organizations that are set up about it. That's your direct proof of racism. But I will not entertain this pregnant people bullshit. If people want to say that, that's fine. If orgs want to say that, that's fine. But I don't think it's wrong to have things that are women focused. I really fucking don't. We do nothing for women. We've done nothing for women at all. And culturally, as movements, as trans movements, we haven't done shit for women either, but my God, aren't they showing up for us? Can we be fucking serious? That's when we have our little fucking marches. Who's there? It's not niggas. It's women. By niggas in this case, I mean men, but I think that could be inferred. Right? It's women. They always have our back. They always have our back. It doesn't work the other way around. And I'm sick of it. I really am. you know, but that's also a place. This is also a dark woke here conversation. I would package it differently, you know, and you'll note that, you know, I package things differently when I make content, and it's part of the reason why it drives me crazy. But I try to take the responsibility seriously. You know what? Yeah, we should. I'm gonna play these like clips for you because it's like, should I save them? Because there's, you know, this is me trying to be cognizant. I don't want to go over like 2 hour mark. It really is just me showing how, okay, no, I think it will make you so mad, but it will make you laugh too, because he's such a fucking idiot. And I think it's like, it's not just him, it's people on the right. And we don't sound that far off sometimes. I swear to God. Okay. What I want to assert is like, they will say they refuse to commit to anything and think that makes them nimble. Like, I will never get over the fact that this weenie loser man who weeps for nothing, the slightest insult, and he just fucking weeps. He's deranged, is Jordan Peterson. Is that it's like it's exposed now? Like they're made up of nothing. If they're made up of nothing, they commit to nothing, they believe in nothing. And this is a man who is a key figure, a key leader in the manosphere. I mean, my brother was listening to this guy before I was like, oh my fucking God, Kareem. No, absolutely not.
Can you be very clear about your definition?
Okay, sorry. I forgot to give you the explanation for this. This is really fucking funny. So Jordan Peterson is on Jubilee. That stupid, you know, duck, duck, goose style debate thing. It's just clip farming, which is all that it is. But it feeds the algorithm beast. So on this one, it's Jordan Peterson. So it's one Christian versus 20 atheists, and Jordan Peterson is meant to be the Christian. And I'll have an update on that in a second. But here we go. So this is one of the participants talking to Jordan Peterson, and you'll know because he sounds like the most loser weenie, like stupid evil character villain I could possibly conjure. And yes, he does dress the way that he sounds.
Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
Okay. Do Catholics attend to Mary?
Well, yes.
Okay. So do they fit that description of worship?
Attend to Mary isn't like Mary, Mary.
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But
place.
you would put it that way.
No.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back.
There's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within
And
the
there's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary
below.
is quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to,
Attend to.
prioritize,
Do
and
Catholics
sacrifice for.
do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't
Well,
add that to my
you
definition.
understand-
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend.
My blood is starting to boil. Like my fucking blood is starting. This guy is such a fucking loser. Everything is about semantics. Everything is about precision. But you notice how he made this commitment and then he walks it back, and you're gonna just see him walk back everything because there's actually nothing there under the hood.
So you can attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
And now you're adding stuff to the definition. But your original
I
definition.
added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Now remember, this whole thing was one Christian versus 20 atheists. But what Jordan Peterson is doing, and the tension, and why you're like, what the fuck is this, is because he does not want to defend Catholicism. He doesn't want to defend Christian values. He doesn't want to commit to anything. He actually doesn't believe in anything. And they all pretend that they do. They all pretend that they do until it comes time to, do you know what I mean, have conviction, of which they have none. Unless it is about hating us. unless it is about things like gender identity extremism or ideology, these people are fucking snake oil salesmen. They're fucking grifters in the highest form, and conservative grifters are starting to be seen for what they are, which is kind of funny. Obviously not enough. But yeah, this is their fucking big smart thinker.
Somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
How do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know
Yes!
where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either
it,
you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression
private.
I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video,
You're really quite something. You are.
aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done
I
with him.
that was honestly that little bitchy retort. Loved, absolutely loved. It's a one great big nothing burger, and I absolutely wish that was the, but like it's like I really want to expose for us the absolute lack of any kind, like the semantics games that they play, right?
So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
Oh, and for the record, it was one. The YouTube title was literally one Christian versus 20 atheists. The guy that you just heard talking in the longer video, not the one I just started. He put out a video on social media and was like, I was invited with that language. And while I can't, say for certain that that's what Peterson got, that's definitely what he got. Like that, they're not going to bring him on under false pretenses, but because Jordan Peterson is such a weenie little nothing burger bitch, right? They had to change it to Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists. And it's like, who the fuck cares about that? They ate his ass up.
What do you mean by believe?
Okay. What do you believe? And he goes, what do you mean by believe? So I just gave you a little ball tickle. This is where we're getting into the real fucking shit. Get ready, babies. If it's nighttime, pull out the wine.
So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
What do you mean by believe?
Think it to be true.
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say you
circular?
believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true.
This is such dumb bitch behavior. This is dropping ontological. When we all know, you don't know. That's the go-to smart word. Remember that for the OG listeners. Yeah. This man is just stringing words together.
And believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if
What's
you
a
believe
belief?
something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean
He's
by
such
that?
a little bitch.
You live for it and you die for it. That's what I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination.
I'm rolling my eyes
It's
so
the presupposition
hard.
of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple.
So this is something that, have you ever been in a relationship or a fight or had a friend or whoever that would do this thing where it's like if you brought something up, they just turn into Al Sharpton and just started throwing fucking words at you, sometimes alliterative. It could be, Don King style, just verbal assaults, rhetorical. It's like a rhetorical assault, a rhetorical barrage, right? I'm going to overwhelm you. I'm going to shock and awe you with words so that I will literally just exhaust you and then call that a victory, even though there was nothing in there, right? Literally not a single thing of substance. This is just him trying to, but the other thing that I actually want you to really think about, because he's using rhetorical force. Rhetorical force is my little literal definition of what that is what he's done though, that he's a rat. Right. And he's just made a bunch of caveats for himself. So with this barrage of information, if the person is unable to recite every single one of those things in the order that they were, put out, then it's, you didn't understand my definition, right? You didn't understand my definition of this. If the person, if Peterson is backed into a corner because of a singular focus on one, he doesn't only have to default to, you didn't understand the definition, but those are all outs for him. He just created a war in underground. And that's the point of that. I will commit to nothing. I will admit nothing. And so we'll just end up dealing in these like dumbass abstractions. These people who, at the very least are younger, I can't necessarily that they're college students, but they're certainly younger than Peterson, are very much being direct and are wanting to engage, and he simply refuses. And it's that type of inauthenticity. It's that type of charlatan behavior, these snake oil salesmen, that lack of substance that honestly drives me up the fucking wall and makes me very concerned about how stupid it just makes people very stupid. This type of waxing poetic, like people who say there's your truth and there's my truth. It's this to me falls into that a little bit, because that's a huge thing that's said on the left. It's quite normalized. It's just when we're using words in really absurd kinds of ways, like, I don't know, trans broken arm syndrome. What the fuck? Okay, I'll get over that. I'll have a good sleep. I'll eat a lot of popcorn after this, and then I will get over it, I promise. So listen to this stupid bitch. He's such a raggedy bitch.
Multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force?
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay, so this actually ties into so much because we've been talking a lot about, Israel's genocide genocide agenda against the Palestinian people. But we've also created new layers and inroads around the Holocaust and how Nazi fascism was able to evolve so it could organize itself to commit hideous atrocities against Jewish people, right? We talked about the evolving thing. So this actually taps into this, which is why it's a bit of a longer clip, but I pulled it for a reason, because I want you to pay attention from here. So Peterson created all these holes for him, right? He created all these holes for himself. So this guy comes back and he goes, okay. So he synthesizes, right? So what he does when he says, so you're saying, you don't believe in something if you wouldn't die for it. So he's synthesizing that information, but doing so that appeals to what Peterson sees as a defense. Peterson sees that as a defense, right? That's going to allow him to not commit. Watch how this evolves from here.
You don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay. So then,
how would you define belief? Something you say?
Can I explain? Like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your life.
Don't be so sure.
Now really pay attention. First of all, he's a stupid bitch. But from that point, lock in right here. Lock in right here to what the pushback is. Right after this. But pay attention to how ridiculous he sounds too, whatever.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I didn't lie to save my clinical practice.
Would you lie to save your children, your mom, your dad?
I don't think lying would save them.
My eyes are rolling so back. I'm looking at my ancestors. I mean, I'm seeing past lives. I think I might have been Asian once. I'm going back. I'm in prehistoric man, baby. I'm on the continent where all life came from. I'm seeing it. That's how far back my eyes are rolling with this. I'm so sorry to subject you to this, but there's something very, very, important. Okay.
Can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
I'll give you an example. If you're in Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's Jewish people in your attic and you're trying to protect them, would you lie to the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with. It's a hypothetical, and it's not answerable.
Hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like
what are we talking about here? He got his ass got. His ass got. He overcommitted, right? He overcommitted, right? And saying, yes, of course, of course, it appealed to his ego to say, you know, if you don't really believe in something, you're not willing to die for it. And it's a challenge to who he sees as like a lesser intellectual being. But then it was put back on him, right? Like you're saying you wouldn't lie, like because you believe it so much you would die for it. You would never lie. You would never lie to save your life, for example. You would never lie to save the life of other people. And he goes, I wouldn't allow those conditions to happen. What a bitch, nigga. Ugh, yuck. Fucking anemic brain ass. Ugh.
Like
What?
that because
Did
it's
you eat
far.
today?
Look,
Did you eat
don't
today?
play games.
I'm not playing a game. I'm just
Yes,
asking if
you
you ate
are.
it.
If you present me with an intractable moral choice that's stripped of context and you back me into a corner, you're playing game. I just
What is it? Like, hilarious.
told you
Hypothetical.
I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Being born in Nazi Germany and trying to protect people that you care about, like there could be a Jewish friend that you have and you want to protect them.
I think you should
have
just
them in
give
your
up on
attic.
that line of questioning.
Give up on just like trying to clarify your position?
Yeah.
Because
I
you don't
did
like, are you like
clarify.
uncomfortable with me asking this question? It's just a basic hypothetical. Like I could ask
It's
you.
just a
did you-
basic
yeah, yeah.
hypothetical
Like,
where you
like if you-
put Jews' lives at stake in Nazi Germany. That's just a basic hypothetical.
Obviously, you would lie in that scenario to save their life, but you're like not trying to answer this question for some reason.
I just told you why.
Are you anti-fascist? Like, so you're
Why are
anti-fascist?
you asking that?
I was just asking, just clarifying. But like, okay, again, you're not answering this hypothetical because you know it shows that you clearly would lie to save
I'm
someone's life.
answering it in
Obviously,
a
that's
manner
not
you
what truth
don't
is.
find acceptable.
Obviously, because I care about
you're-
truth.
I wouldn't be in that scenario.
Obviously,
I just wouldn't be there. I would will my way out of it.
right? Logically, because that's
No.
already happened. Like that's in the past. You don't have a time.
Babe, you can't even get out of this scenario with this pretty little white boy talking to you. You think you're gonna find your way out of Nazi Germany, nigga? You can't get out of this conversation.
Time travel device. We're bringing this logical hypothetical up.
You are in a rhetorical prison of a nothing burger mind. You are a simple, scurvy-having, raggedy bitch. You've made yourself rich off of the fuck. Oh, wait. Oh, my God, the time. Let me play this out. Oh, my God.
To show you that in some circumstances that do happen within the real world, you would lie to save people's lives. So your definition of truth isn't actually how we're typically using it. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to muddy the waters when I ask you, like, do you believe this? Do you think this to be true? So you don't actually have to answer the questions. And plenty of Christians don't like that because they clearly see that you don't really like want to be associated with
I can
Christianity with that
imagine
respect.
that I was in a situation where the best I could do as a consequence of my previous mistakes was to tell the least amount of lie I could manage. But that would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So
Right.
you would lie to save someone's life. So again, you do believe it to be true in that circumstance, even though you like lied in that scenario. So
Not
clearly that's
without
not
the
what you see to be true.
context that I put it in.
Oh,
You were
my
not willing to
God.
die for it. You
Said-
were not willing to let other people die for it. So that's not what you see to be true then, seemingly.
You're doing exactly what I said you were doing at the beginning of the conversation.
That's when you
Generating
lost.
an impossible, restricted, hypothetical.
Shut up, bitch. One of the great things about this is everyone has been saying that Jordan Peterson got his ass ate up. And he did. He's a fraud as an intellectual. He creates these unbelievable, burdensome framings. Like, okay, why am I revisiting Kant? Because it's not something you can read without reading other philosophers first. And there are levels, and but what he is exercising, I guess what I'm saying is it's just like it's so dense. Like Kant is so fucking dense. But it is not performative, and it has substance. Whereas this presents itself as dense, but it's just performative and absolutely lacks any kind of substance whatsoever. Shit, I know we gotta go because I try to cap these things at once. I just want to like this is not from the clip, but just like listen to him talk. Like this is not from the debate, sorry, but this is just like him from that's another clip that really demonstrates how these people talk.
Well, the question, did that happen, begs the question, what do you mean by happen? Because when you
The question of what happened means, what did you mean by happen?
are dealing with fundamental realities and you pose a question, you have to understand that the reality of the concepts of your question, when you're digging that deep, are just as questionable as what you're questioning.
Shut up. This is a leading intellectual on the right. This is a leading intellectual on the right. We don't deserve this. We're not going out like this. I won't. I simply refuse. I simply absolutely refuse. We're going to pick up on some of this tomorrow because I think that these understanding and being able to identify what is happening, how it's happening, what is rhetorical force, the performativity, etc., is so key. What's great is, of course, all these conservatives, as I mentioned, came out and said this is, fraud. Jordan Peterson is a fraud. Which is fine. But there's tomorrow. I'm going to play some clips too. Like, well, obviously we'll have a robust, sesh, but of Charlie Kirk at Cambridge University. And a relatively fiery debate. And at the end of this, there are risks. There are risks for speaking out on Gaza. There are risks in everything. This country has made it illegal to criticize Israel, illegal to be pro-Palestinian, illegal to demand an end to Israel's genocide against the Palestinian people. There's a risk involved in that. But the greatest risk is losing yourself, because when we deny the humanity of others, we lose ourselves. And we just keep giving more and more away. They need us. They need us to care. They need us to be there. They need us to be loud. They need us to keep fighting. They deserve that from us because they are people. They're fucking us. They're us. And what we allow anywhere can happen everywhere. And this isn't just some random situation. No, this is America footing the bill. They denied humanitarian aid. Then they let such a small amount through. And then they started shooting people who were there. Yeah. This is where we really figure out who we are. Because as, Niemöller mentioned, when it came time for people to speak for me, there was nobody there. So we have to be there. We have to be here. And we have to be present. We have to bear witness. The way that we bear our part in this, our responsibility to it. And it doesn't have to be the thing that becomes, I don't know. I don't know that I have anything. I'm still staggered by, the reality of damn 300,000 and let alone the conditions that people are living in. It makes you want to, it's as old boy said, it's inconceivable. And that means that we have to understand it all the more, understand why, how, fight against, show up still. Because it is inconceivable and it ought not to be. Right? I mean, the fact of what Israel's done, don't get me wrong, should always be considered that. But this didn't happen October 7th, 2023. It didn't happen. It wasn't sudden. It's been going on for years. It's been going on for decades. It's been going on for generations. And I'm grateful that I was a part of a movement like, Black Lives Matter in its truest iteration between 2013 and 2017, where, where we learned, we went there, we fought with. And, we were punished for that by the left, by a lot of the foundations that, that gave us the small funding that we got. But I'm so grateful. And it hurts all the more having made a connection with the place and with the people. And it should. It should. You know, this is far from over. This is not the time to turn away. This is the time to turn up. And we can do that together. We must. We must, because to fight fascism here is also to fight fascism there, and vice versa. And that's what we're saying. That is what we're saying. Absolutely. All right. I know. You know, we'll get, we have more time, and that's the thing that we have. That's the luxury that we have, is to have time. So let's make the most of it. We're holding all of this together. It's not meant to be held alone. It's not meant to be fought alone either. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much for listening to Dark Woke. It means the world to me. The show really is a labor of love. We got new episodes dropping all the time, everywhere podcasts are. If you love the show, please feel free to support it as best you can. You know, we're at Patreon/DarkWoke. Anything you want to say, you want to bite me, you want to come chat me up, I'm at darkwokejfk@gmail.com. I just want to say shout out to you, the listeners, that make it all possible. Love you. Peace.